Across history, punishment has often been used not only to enforce law, but to send a message. Few punishments illustrate this more starkly than the removal of the tongue for blasphemy. This penalty appears in historical records across different regions and eras, not as a universal practice, but as an extreme response in societies where speech was believed to have sacred power. To understand this punishment factually, it is necessary to strip away sensationalism and examine the legal, religious, and cultural frameworks that produced it. Blasphemy, in historical terms, referred to speech or writing perceived as insulting, denying, or challenging the authority of a deity, sacred symbols, or religious institutions. In societies where religion was inseparable from law and governance, blasphemy was not merely a personal offense but a threat to social order. Words were seen as capable of invoking divine wrath, spreading heresy, or destabilizing moral authority. As a result, controlling speech became a matter of survival for religious states. The idea of punishing speech by targeting the tongue followed a symbolic logic. In pre-modern legal systems, punishments often mirrored the crime. Theft led to loss of property or hand mutilation, perjury led to facial marking, and blasphemy, as a sin of speech, led to punishment of the organ responsible. This principle, known to historians as symbolic justice, appears in legal traditions across the ancient and medieval world. In ancient Mesopotamia, law codes such as the Code of Hammurabi do not explicitly prescribe tongue removal for blasphemy, but they do include bodily punishments for verbal offenses, including false accusations and disrespect toward authority. Speech was already understood as dangerous when misused. While evidence of tongue removal specifically is limited in Mesopotamia, the legal mindset that equated words with physical harm was firmly established. In ancient India, early legal and religious texts such as the Manusmriti discuss punishments for blasphemy or insults directed at gods, priests, or sacred texts. Some passages describe severe corporal punishments, including mutilation, depending on caste and context. Modern historians approach these texts cautiously, recognizing that they often reflect idealized or theoretical law rather than everyday practice. However, they do show that extreme penalties for religious speech were considered legitimate within certain ancient frameworks. In ancient Persia, Zoroastrianism placed immense importance on truth and righteous speech. False or impure words were believed to strengthen evil forces. While there is limited direct archaeological evidence of tongue removal, historical sources describe harsh corporal punishments for religious transgressions. The emphasis was less on silencing dissent and more on purifying society from perceived moral corruption. Medieval Europe provides clearer documentary evidence. Blasphemy was considered both a religious sin and a civil crime. Church courts and secular authorities often cooperated in prosecuting offenders. Punishments varied widely, ranging from fines and public penance to imprisonment. In extreme cases, particularly during periods of religious instability, mutilation was imposed. Chroniclers record instances in which repeat offenders had tongues pierced, split, or partially removed. These acts were rare but real, and they were intended to permanently silence offenders while publicly demonstrating the cost of sacrilege. In Christian theology, speech held immense spiritual significance. The Bible itself begins with creation through the spoken word. To misuse speech was therefore to distort divine order. Medieval lawmakers justified severe punishments by citing the need to protect the community from divine punishment. If blasphemy went unpunished, it was believed God might withdraw protection from the entire society. Islamic legal history presents a more complex picture. Classical Islamic jurisprudence treats blasphemy differently depending on context, intent, and school of law. While harsh punishments existed in theory, including corporal penalties, historical records show wide variation in enforcement. Most documented punishments involved imprisonment, exile, or execution rather than mutilation. Tongue removal is not a standard or widely prescribed Islamic punishment, though isolated historical accounts exist in politically motivated cases. Modern scholars emphasize that such acts were often driven by rulers rather than religious consensus. In imperial China, blasphemy as understood in monotheistic religions did not exist in the same form. However, speech against the emperor, ancestors, or state ideology was treated as a severe crime. Punishments for seditious or sacrilegious speech included mutilation during certain dynasties. Confucian ideology linked harmony to proper speech, and words that disrupted social order were treated as existential threats. One of the clearest examples of speech-related mutilation appears in medieval Japan. Under certain feudal codes, severe punishments were imposed for insults against religious or political authority. While not common, mutilation was sometimes used to permanently mark offenders and deter others. Again, these acts were exceptional rather than routine, but they were legally justified within the worldview of the time. It is crucial to understand that these punishments were not random cruelty. They emerged from societies where religion, law, and identity were fused. Blasphemy was perceived not as an opinion, but as an act capable of unraveling cosmic and social order. In a world without freedom of speech as a concept, words were regulated tools, not personal expressions. Modern historians stress that such punishments declined as legal systems evolved. The rise of secular governance, constitutional law, and human rights frameworks transformed how societies understood speech. The Enlightenment introduced the idea that beliefs and expressions should not be punished by physical harm. Over time, blasphemy laws were softened, repealed, or rendered obsolete in many parts of the world. Archaeological and textual evidence confirms that tongue removal did occur, but far less frequently than popular media suggests. Most societies preferred less permanent penalties such as fines, public humiliation, or exile. Mutilation was reserved for cases intended to shock, intimidate, or establish authority during periods of instability. It is also important to separate myth from evidence. Many dramatic stories of mass tongue removal are unsupported by reliable sources. Medieval chroniclers often exaggerated punishments to emphasize moral lessons. Modern scholarship relies on court records, legal texts, and contemporaneous accounts to verify claims. When these sources are examined carefully, extreme punishments appear as exceptions rather than norms. The psychological impact of such punishments was profound. They were designed not only to punish the individual but to silence society through fear. Public punishment served as theater, reinforcing authority and discouraging dissent. This technique was used across cultures, regardless of religion, whenever rulers felt threatened by uncontrolled speech. Today, tongue removal for blasphemy is universally condemned under international human rights law. It violates prohibitions against torture, cruel punishment, and suppression of free expression. Modern legal systems recognize that ideas, even offensive ones, do not justify physical harm. Where blasphemy laws still exist, they are increasingly challenged and scrutinized. Studying this punishment is not about fascination with cruelty, but about understanding how power operates. It reveals how fear, belief, and authority intersected in pre-modern societies. It also shows how far legal thought has evolved. The same words that once led to mutilation are now protected under free speech doctrines in many nations. The historical reality of tongue removal for blasphemers reminds us that progress in law and ethics is neither automatic nor guaranteed. Rights that seem obvious today were won through centuries of struggle, debate, and reform. Remembering these practices helps contextualize modern values and reinforces the importance of protecting expression, even when it challenges deeply held beliefs. In the end, the story of this punishment is a story about control. It reflects a time when silence was enforced through fear and speech was treated as a weapon. By examining it through verified historical evidence, we gain insight not only into the past, but into why modern societies place such importance on freedom of thought and expression.